Hi there, this is Book of Mormon Reader with a little part 3, and this one I promise to be brief. I don't intend to do a diatribe. I just wanted to make sure that I gave a thoughtful response to Santora 57's installment here, as he did invite me to participate, and I am not an observer. I am a participator. I suit up in full gear if I'm going to play this game. So with that said, I failed to mention something that was critical in what you mentioned that I just wanted to make sure that I pointed out. And you had all these cute little sounds and the truth and error part of it. And there were some things that, were sort of taken out of context, and I don't want to get my knickers in a twist over it. I just wanted to make sure that I let you know that I didn't gloss over it and that I did want to bring it to attention, because I suspect that there are some of your viewers who will, at will take what you say at face value, but not do some of their own investigation, which is kind of a shame, because it's worth investigating. If it's worth dissing, it's worth investigating to find out for sure. And so there were certain things that you put in a light that I think was maybe you misunderstood, or that you were trying to cast some sort of a light. And I don't mean to insinuate that you're trying to do something that is, clandestine by any stretch, but let me just point out what it was. You talked about Nephi. That is the proper pronunciation, Nephi, writing this story. And he writes one of the stories. In the Book of Mormon, it's a collection of records from different prophets that were actually handed down through generation through generation through generation. Now, I'm always mindful, as I have been recording the Book of Mormon chapter by chapter, of a few things, because I'm very familiar with the Book of Mormon. I can't even tell you what number this is for me as far as my recording, but I will say that this is the very first reading that I have done of the Book of Mormon that I have done totally aloud. I've listened to it on tape numerous times, countless times, but this is the first time that my own vocal cords have uttered each syllable in the Book of Mormon. And I do have to say it has had a profound effect on every cell in my being, and I don't even know how to qualify or quantify what effect that has had on me or my spirit, but I do know that it has been powerful. So one other thing that I'm very mindful of that I hadn't really considered before, but sometimes I mess up when I'm reading, and I don't want to re-record the whole thing. And so I will just gloss over. I'll say with instead of without, which gives it the completely opposite meaning. Or I'll put in a the, and my own mistake, just like he talks about, like he says, oh, it's kind of my mistake that you made a reference to in Alma. So these were actually metal plates that were engraven upon. They didn't have all this slick equipment that we have. They didn't have a little cordless mouse to go back and make corrections. They didn't have that. They had painstaking tools to engraven upon these brass plates that they might last for centuries hidden up in the earth. And so, you think about, if you keep a journal, how long between times that you keep a journal do you record? Do you write every day? Do you write every week? Do you write every month? I mean, I got to a point when I was married for 18 years, that the only writing I did as far as a recording of what the events that took place were my annual Christmas letters. And so I'd be like, when did we go see that show? When was that? Was that in April or May? Now, so that when they're talking about reckoning the time, now they say if he was a just man, and we think it was 33 years or whatever, remember they passed these plates along. and they did their best to try and catch up on things. Now, another thing that Nephi mentions that I want to make perfectly clear, he talks about nothing going on these plates except it be of a sacred nature. They had large plates and they had small plates. And he had these special plates only for sacred things. So the Book of Mormon that we have today is only sacred things. They don't deal with all of the goings and comings of the regular day-to-day stuff. It only has to do with our salvation. This is the very reason why it's totally critical for us today. And here's the other reason why. Because the Book of Mormon was never read by the people of whom it speaks. They never got to see it. It is for us today. Their voices cry from the dust to bless us. Because the time frame that it covers, which was right before the Savior came to them, and all of the wars and destructions and the wickedness and the righteousness of the people, all of that is in direct accordance with what's going on with us today, as we believe the second coming is nigh. And so the Book of Mormon is directly related to our time period, even though so many years have passed. So isn't that interesting? They never got to see the Book of Mormon. We got it. It's for us. It's for us in our latter days. They saw us. They saw our day. And it's just for us. And so, you think about that. Wow. Those books were made just for us. And so some people who were passed these plates, maybe they didn't know how to engrave. And so they only wrote a few little sentences. I can't tell you how many they say, oh yeah, I had them and I was not a very good person. And so I'm going to pass these plates on to somebody else so that I am not responsible to have this sacred responsibility that, my offering for the future, I'm not going to be responsible for it. So one of the things that you implied, that when they talked about errors, they didn't have whiteout, they didn't have backspaces, and so if they made a mistake, they had to kind of reword it, and they would say something like, I misspoke. So that's really not an error, it's a correction. So I just wanted to point that out, that what you were calling an error, that they admit a human error, it's really a correction. Just like if I wanted to go back, I could go into YouTube and add some little insight comments or whatever. It's just something that as an insight I wanted to add it. So an error would be to me that if somebody else found some glaring thing from some other documents that were unearthed and said, hey, this is not right. Like, for example, when you read the part in 1 Nephi where Nephi says, and I, Nephi, having been born of goodly parents. Well, Nephi also had brothers, Laman and Lemuel, and they throughout the Book of Mormon are characterized as people who would see angels, they would see amazing things, excuse me, but they would have a totally different response. So what if Laman and Lemuel were keeping plates? What would their story would be like? And I, Laman, having been born of, ridiculous parents. That would be a whole nother record, wouldn't it? But somehow that's not the one that was preserved by God. And one more little thing that you talked about, that you said, well, lots of these phrases were plagiarized. Your quote word, plagiarized. Hello! Think about who we claim to be author of this book, who commanded these prophets to write it. If God is the same yesterday and today and forever, which so far all evidences do point to that, and he says that this book is actually a testimony that this book is true, and that the two shall run together and prove that he is the same today and tomorrow, and that there may be many other places from the different tribes that we don't know. He talks about Joseph and Judah, but what if there are other tribes that have his word? So he's going to not give different types of words. So it's not that he plagiarized. It literally proves that he is the author of these words, that he is the commandments of these words. So that's my heartfelt rebuttal. I don't mean to be disagreeable by any stretch. I just want to point that out, that what you're offering as plagiarism is actually in support of what the Book of Mormon purports to be, that it is another testament of Jesus Christ. So I do thank you for allowing me the time to express my honest rebuttal to your video. Thank you. I'm Book of Mormon Reader.